Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to War Thunder with the mighty Jingles, where today, no, I'm not doing the annual War Thunder video gag again, I figure it's run its course by now. Today, however, courtesy of Necrophorus in the MiG-21 SMT, we're seeing a War Thunder battle the likes of which I have never seen before. The first important thing to point out in this battle is that an entire 2/3 of the enemy team consist of this thing. This is the latest flavour of the month premium jet aircraft in War Thunder, the A5C. Unless you actually play War Thunder, there's an excellent chance that you've probably never actually heard of this aircraft, because it is in fact the export version of the Chinese Q5 jet aircraft, which itself was a modification of the Shenyang J6, which was basically a copy of the MiG-19. Yeah, it gets a bit complicated, and it's about to get a bit more complicated, because here's the thing. The Nanchang Q5, which is available in War Thunder, and which the A5C is basically an export version of, doesn't have air-to-air missiles. And it doesn't have air-to-air missiles because at the time China didn't know how to make air-to-air missiles, and Russia, who at the time were not particularly happy with the Chinese Communist Party, refused to sell air-to-air missiles to them. So how the hell do you convince so many people to buy a premium Chinese export fighter that doesn't have air-to-air missiles at a battle rating where everybody else has air-to-air missiles? Simple. You call it the A5C export version that was sold to Pakistan, and the thing about Pakistan is they had access to Western technology, like flight instrumentation made by Rockwell Collins, ejection seats made by Martin Baker, and Western missiles such as the ubiquitous AIM-9 Sidewinder, but more importantly, the R550 Matra Magic, which at the moment is unarguably the best missile available in War Thunder. A deadly heat-seeking missile so manoeuvrable that it can pull a 30G turn, and which, until now, has only been available to aircraft like the French Mirage 3, the French F-8 Crusader, and the French version of the Jaguar. But now, a relatively crappy Chinese communist jet fighter that technically wasn't even really as good as the MiG-19, upon which, if you go back far enough, it was based, and which you wouldn't realistically expect to be able to sell it to anybody at this battle tier because it didn't have any air-to-air missiles. Well, now it does have air-to-air missiles, and not any old air-to-air missiles. It's got the best air-to-air missiles in War Thunder. So it's not really any big surprise that 8 of the 12 aircraft on the enemy team in this battle are A5Cs, and Gaijin are laughing all the way to the bank. That's not the unusual thing about this battle, however. That sort of thing is apparently quite normal now that the A5C has gone on sale. Now, what's unusual about this battle is just how quickly Necrophorus' team are crumbling. I see World of Tanks teams collapsing in 4 minutes all the time. In World of Warships, sometimes by the 4-minute mark, it's apparent exactly which team is going to win and which team is going to lose. But realistically, in World of Warships, it usually takes at least twice as long as that. I have never seen a team crumble as quickly as this in War Thunder. Maybe that just means I should get out and play more War Thunder, and maybe I'd see this sort of thing more often. But all I know for sure right now is that we are less than 3 minutes into this battle, and Necrophorus' team have been reduced to 3 of the original 12 aircraft, and they've only managed to shoot down 2 of the enemy team between the 12 of them. We have Necrophorus and his MiG-21, we have another MiG-21, and a Harrier GR3, who, Fox 2 there from one of the A5Cs, although, hang on, he launched that from a range of about 3.5 kilometres, that is never going to hit. While the Magic is an incredibly capable missile, its maximum launch range varies wildly depending on the altitude. Because there's another one coming in, launched from much closer range, and that very, very nearly hit. This one could also be a problem. He's accelerating hard though. The thing about the Magic, talking about its effective range, and why it heavily depended on the altitude at which you were engaging, was because it only had a boost time of 2 seconds. And in that 2 seconds, it could reach speeds of up to Mach 4. There's another one being launched there, and it's also too far away. Now the speed, and therefore the range, that the weapon was capable of achieving depended on altitude, because at a low altitude the air is a lot thicker, which meant that, well, we're watching people launching, they clearly have no idea what they're doing. they've clearly just bought themselves a battle rating 10 aircraft and have no real idea how to use its weapon systems. Because down here at low altitude, where the air is a lot thicker, the Magic only really has an effective range of about 2 kilometres. Now if you were engaging at higher altitude, where the air was much thinner, the same missile would have an effective range of anything up to about 8 kilometres. So we're watching people launch these missiles from a range of 4 to 5 kilometres because the missile is telling them, I've got a lock, so they're just hitting the fire button, but they're not taking into consideration the altitude, because they probably don't understand the difference that the altitude makes. Meanwhile, Necrophorus here in the MiG-21 SMT is going to be armed with the R-60s, and this is a perfect launch aspect and range, which makes it all the more surprising that that was not an actual kill. The hell? Yeah, he's still flying. Although he is flying, and in something of a suicide dive, because he's desperate to get that GR3 Harrier right above the airfield's air defences, and that's probably what set him on fire. Because I'm not seeing the other MiG-21, who is still flying and did just set an enemy aircraft on fire somewhere. You can see them diving down on that poor old Harrier right through all of the flak. That Harrier, by the way, cursing the fact, and yeah, they took each other out, cursing the fact that, for reasons known only to Gaijin, the Harrier GR3 in War Thunder does not get the flares that it actually got in real life. Flares in a battle like this, where there are that many Matra R550 Magics flying around, would have been extremely beneficial, and he did ridiculously well to survive this far. But now there's just the 2 of them left. 2 MiG-21s. Necrophorus, because he's in the MiG-21 SMT, does not have the R-60M missile, which would be really useful. Unfortunately, that missile is restricted to aircraft like the MiG-23 and the MiG-27. Likewise, the other surviving pilot here, Trihars, in the MiG-21 MF, is also restricted to the R-60s. That looks like East German colours. The R-60s are good missiles, though. The major difference between the R-60, which they have, and the R-60M, which they probably wish they had, is that the R-60M is an all-aspect missile that can be launched at a target from any angle. It doesn't have to be from behind. Having said that, though, the R-60 is a good missile. It can also pull 30 Gs of acceleration, and because it's about half the weight of its closest competitor, the AIM-9J Sidewinder, it means it pulls better at lower speeds and higher altitudes. Hang on, lower speeds and higher altitudes, so what are these 2 MiG-21s doing down on the deck? Well, it's still not as good as the R550, which outperforms the R60 at altitude. You see, the R60 burns for 3 seconds. It's slower to accelerate, but it accelerates longer. So down at low altitude like this, the R60 does have a slight edge because it can be launched and track from slightly further away than the Magic. That, of course, assumes that the enemy A5Cs are going to play ball and come down to the deck to fight you, which they're probably not going to want to do. Well, I don't know. They shouldn't want to do, but they've been doing plenty of it so far, which is why there's only 2 of them left. Yes, that's right, the enemy team have thrown away. Here's one of them. And there's the other one. There are only 2 of them left. There were 10 enemy aircraft still flying a few minutes ago. 7 of them A5Cs. And they're managing to lose to what were 3 and are now only 2 members of Necrophorus' team. How do you even do that? How is that even possible? Trihars here has 3 kills. Necrophorus has 1. I don't think the Harrier got any kills because he was desperately trying to land and repair and rearm and refuel. So, the numbers just don't add up. At the point where it was 10 versus 3, let's assume that neither Trihars nor Necrophorus got any of those 2 kills. Which means that with the 4 kills that they have between them, that's a maximum of 6 enemy aircraft accounted for. Who got the other 4? Well, some of them crashed because they were diving after ground targets and they're, well, noobs who don't know how to fly their aircraft. And the A5C actually suffers from control compression at high speed and high angles of attack, so they weren't able to pull up and pancaked. And some of them got shot down by those ground targets. So hang on, back to try hards. He's managed to get an R60 away against that A5. I don't know what's happened to the camera here. Did he get him? No, he's still on 3 kills. And we've got the camera back. But yes, some of them got shot down by those ground targets because the A5 has absolutely terrible armour. It has 10mm of steel plate behind the nose cone, 60mm of bulletproof glass in the cockpit front only, an 8mm steel plate underneath the cockpit, a 25mm steel armoured pilot seat, and anything between 10 and 16mm of steel around the pilot's headrest. Or in other words, it's enough to protect the pilot from a Vietnamese villager with a rifle, and that's about it, which is why so many of them have been shot down by the historically terrible M247 self-propelled 40mm anti-aircraft gun platforms. These things were so bad, their radar had a hard time telling the difference between a tree and an aircraft. I'm not making this up. If the guns elevated too high, they would get in the way of and confuse the radar, which is a fairly significant problem in something that's designed to shoot down aircraft. During testing, they were completely unable to hit horizontally flying target drones. Oh, that was a good kill. It wasn't tryhards. I should have been watching Necrophorus there, shouldn't I? Where is he? What's he up to? There he is. Yes, the M247 was completely unable during testing to hit horizontally flying target drones. They eventually forced the target drones to hover, and it was still unable to hit them. They ended up having to actually put radar reflectors onto the drones so that the M247 could actually see and lock onto them. One was eventually shot down, although at that point it had 4 radar reflectors added to it, and this was described as being similar to demonstrating the abilities of a bloodhound by having it find a man standing alone in the middle of an empty parking lot covered with stakes. The project was cancelled. And this is the self-propelled anti-aircraft gun in War Thunder that seems to have been responsible for shooting down most of these A5Cs. The last one of which in this battle doesn't really seem to want to fight anybody. Like the other one who just got shot down by Necrophorus, he just seems to want to stooge around at high altitude and tempt the MiG-21s into coming up to fight him. Which, since they now outnumber him 2-1, they both appear to be entirely happy to do. The Chinese fighters' missiles will have the advantage at this kind of altitude over the R-60s carried by the 2 Russians, but, well, it's still 2-on-1. He only carries 2 missiles. And the 2 MiG-21s have at least, I don't know, 7 between the 2 of them? Like Necrophorus, well, Necrophorus has used what he shot down the other A5C. Those are not the kind of odds that you want to count on. At this point, I did think for a minute that he had just given up, but he is actually hunting down tryhards, who's below him at lower altitude. And this is an incredibly risky manoeuvre to pull in an A5C because the tail will lock up at high speeds. But he's using the air brakes there to control his speed to ensure that he does not suffer from control compression. And while this range is good for a missile shot, the angle is not. So instead, he's closing in and he's going to go for a gun kill. And he's managed to hit tryhards with his twin 23mm autocannon, which is kind of surprising, because these are not particularly good versions of the ubiquitous communist 23mm 8-aware gun. Although tryhards is still flying. Let's have a... Oh, no, he's not. Well, technically he is. He hasn't hit the ground yet, but he's in a flat spin. So he's done. Which means now it's down to Necrophorus. And neither of these aircraft are equipped with all-aspect missiles, so in a head-on pass like this, it's going to come down to the guns. And they're probably going to be very, very delicate about it. Yep. There's the merge. Neither of them hit each other. It looks like they're going into a one-circle fight. If the A5 were to try to pull the MiG-21 into a vertical manoeuvre, it might have a slight advantage, but that A5 is actually also loaded down with rocket pods, and that's not going to help, which means that Necrophorus may actually be able to outturn it. Didn't have the shot. the guns there. Is he going to try for a missile? It's a bad angle. Actually, no. Maybe he can. Yep. Fox 2. A5 spoofed it with flares. Does not carry a lot of flares, however. Can at best only really do that twice. It does have a radar warning receiver, but that's not going to be too much help in this particular fight. He's gone high. He's pulling Necrophorus in with vertical manoeuvre and then coming down again. The A5 does have very, very good energy retention. Nearly got him with the guns. Oh, Necrophorus still does kind of have the advantage here. He's able to at least stay in the rear aspect of the A5. Oh, what was that puff of black smoke? Is he trying to shed weight by firing off his rockets? Either way, he very nearly got hit. Necrophorus is finding it very difficult to keep the nose on target here. It's difficult to see exactly what his airspeed is. Well, we can't see exactly what his airspeed is. It's difficult to say how close he comes to stalling out here. Again, he came really close to scoring a hit. Dump the nose, following him down. Going to be grateful to pick up a bit of extra speed here. A5 again trying to pull him into a vertical spiralling manoeuvre where he has the advantage. Oh, he's got him. Well, it's about damn time. And that is how a pair of MiG-21s, because technically the Harry was grounded for most of that fight, managed to beat 10 enemy aircraft. Or perhaps it's more about how 10 enemy aircraft managed to throw against a pair of 2 MiG-21s. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that that was all, because the majority of the enemy team were very probably noobs who had just bought their way into a battle rating 10 match by splashing some cash on the latest flavour of the month overpowered premium aircraft. But it was probably a factor. Take care, folks, and I'll catch you next time.